Hello friends, my name is Eric Cloward and welcome to the Stoic Coffee Break. Today's episode is about boundaries. So today I want to talk about how Stoicism can help us set healthy boundaries in our lives. And learning how to set healthy boundaries is not easy. I was never really taught this growing up, and so this is something I've had to learn over the past few years, and to be honest, it's incredibly challenging. Epictetus said, to achieve freedom and happiness, you need to grasp this basic truth. Some things in life are under your control, and others are not. And while this seems like a very clear concept of, the things we can't control are our thinking, our emotions, our actions, and letting go of everything else, this is still one of the hardest things to master. Truly understanding and taking responsibility for the things that you can't control is hard. And it's much easier to blame our misfortunes, our unhappiness, and things that go wrong on things or people that are outside of ourselves. But every time we do this, we allow ourselves to become a victim, and we don't come any closer to solving the issue that we're actually dealing with. So how do we deal with things that we can't control, but have a big impact on us? For example, we can't control what other people do or say, but does this mean that we just have to let them do what they're going to do, and we just have to live with however their actions impact us? I think that Stoicism gives us some great tools of how to handle these situations. First, let's talk about what a boundary is. A boundary is a clear statement about what your actions will be in a given situation. It is letting the other person know what you will do. It is not telling somebody else what they need to do, and it is not setting an ultimatum. When we set boundaries, we are acting on the things that we can control, namely what we say and what we do. And we let others know how we will respond in a given situation. We don't tell others what to do because that is not within our control. Now, this is a really hard thing for most of us because we want to control the things and people around us. But when we try to control others, we aren't taking responsibility for the things that we can control, namely ourselves. And we often try to control others through all kinds of different ways, whether that's through manipulation or coercion, threats, ultimatums, all of which are trying to control the actions of others, and most of which generally fail. Why is it important to set healthy boundaries? Well, figuring out your boundaries helps you understand what you want and how you want to be treated. It's a way for you to define your values, and it's a way for you to stand up for yourself. Setting boundaries is how you let other people know how you want to be treated. And it improves relationships because you let the other person know how they can respect and support you. Now, setting boundaries, especially where they weren't before, can be exceptionally challenging. And often when you start to set boundaries with people that weren't there before, there's resistance. The other person may not like the fact that you are putting up some boundaries, and they may have liked how things were. And they may try to test these boundaries that you have set up, which is why it is really important that when you set a boundary, that you hold it. Because maintaining boundaries is how you respect and take care of yourself. So how do we set healthy boundaries? There are a few steps that we can do to create healthy boundaries. The first of which is to decide what is acceptable behavior. Decide what things uphold your values and what things do not. Decide what you will and won't put up with. Second, decide what action you will take in response to a given situation. And remember, this is about you and your actions. It is not telling the other person what they have to do. Third, you need to communicate this boundary to the other person. You don't have to explain yourself, and you don't have to justify why you are setting a boundary. You have the right to determine what you will and won't do. Also, remember, this is not an ultimatum, but it's just a statement of what your actions are going to be. Fourth, hold up your end of the bargain and take action when necessary. Now, in some cases, setting a boundary is as simple as saying no. Whether in relationships at work or friends or family, a clear and concise no is often the best way to create healthy relationships. It lets others know how to respect your space and time. And remember, you don't have to explain yourself. And I really have to drive that home because I know that this is something that I do oftentimes. Because I'm a people pleaser, I want to make sure that people understand and that they're okay with this. And the thing is that we each have the right to determine what we will or won't do. Now, sometimes setting boundaries is a little more involved. Let's say, for example, that you have a friend who frequently gets drunk whenever you go out together, and it bothers you. When they're drunk, they get loud and obnoxious, and maybe it's led to some uncomfortable situations. Setting a clear boundary would be, for example, letting them know that if they continue to get drunk when you're out together, that you're going to excuse yourself and head home. Now, in this case, you made it clear what actions you will take in that situation. You did not tell your friend that they had to stop drinking. You just made it clear what you will do if they continue to drink. And the next time you are out with your friend and they decide to get drunk, you politely but firmly excuse yourself and head home. The last aspect I want to discuss is making sure that we respect the boundaries of other people. When someone else has set a boundary, we need to be sure that we acknowledge and do our best to respect it. We need to be careful that we don't try to persuade or talk them out of it, or get frustrated and try to bully them into doing what we want them to do. Recognizing and respecting the boundaries of others is a very clear recognition that we cannot control other people. Learning how to set boundaries is a process of defining your values and understanding your value. It is how you let others know how you want to be treated. Think of setting boundaries as creating a guidebook to you. And that's the end of today's episode. Remember, be good to yourselves, be good to others, and thanks for listening.
Hey friends, thanks for listening to the podcast. If you like what you hear, I would really appreciate if you could help support me by making a pledge on Patreon. You can find me at patreon.com/stoiccoffee. Even just a small amount helps in keeping this podcast going. Also, head on over to my website at www.stoic.coffee and sign up for our weekly newsletter. And lastly, if you know of someone that might like or could benefit from this podcast, please share it with them. Word of mouth is one of the best ways to help this podcast grow. Thanks again for listening.